Hi all, this is Steph Giordano with Human Services Research Institute, or HSRI, in Cambridge, Massachusetts. This is the first of 4 modules for a National Core Indicators refresher training for the 2016-17 data collection cycle. So this first module is really a review of sort of the key points of what NCI is, as well as an overview of the Adult Consumer Survey and some of the various important protocol in administering the survey itself. I should note that this refresher training, all these modules are really intended to be used by those of you who have done the survey in the past and are fairly familiar with the survey as well as the project. For those of you who are newer to the project, we have more in-depth training. So briefly, what is National Core Indicators? The project is a voluntary effort by developmental disability agencies with the goal of being able to measure and track their own performance. States are also able to use NCI data to compare themselves to other states. We began back in 1997. We had 13 piloting states that really helped us to test and refine the tool in the field. We now have 46 states, including Washington, D.C., as well as 22 sub-state entities. And the project is coordinated by HSRI, which is the organization I work for, as well as NASDS, which is the National Association of State Directors for DD Services. When we talk about indicators, we are talking about those standard measures that are used across all of our NCI states in order to look at the outcomes and effectiveness of services that are provided to individuals as well as their families. Because these indicators are consistent from state to state, that is how states are able to look at themselves compared to other states. Indicators look at key areas of concern, including, as listed here, employment, rights, choice, health and safety, and a number of other larger kind of domains and areas of focus. So NCI has expanded pretty exponentially over the past several years, largely thanks to a contract awarded from the Administration on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, AIDD. The contract funded up to 5 states' participation in NCI for each of the 5 years of that contract. The goal was to increase participation to include all 50 states, which we are pretty close to hitting as a target. We added 2 new states for 2016-17. And back a couple of years ago, we added a whole new project to National Core Indicators, which is NCI for Aging and Disability. This tool, again, was added back in 2014-2015. All right, so a little more specifics about the Adult Consumer Survey, and again, you all are pretty familiar with this. So there are 4 parts of the survey. That pre-survey information, which is always collected before the meeting takes place. This is information to help interviewers set up and conduct the survey. It includes those familiar names and terms that the person may better understand, rather than some of the service jargony information and words that we use throughout the survey. The background information is obtained from what the state feels is the best source. Oftentimes, the information is collected before the meeting takes place, but may also be collected during or even after the meeting when needed. Then we get into section 1, and this is the start of the face-to-face meeting with the individual. These are questions that only the person receiving services can respond to. They're the more subjective questions, so things like whether people like their home, if they're ever scared, if they like what they do during the day, those sort of things. Then we have section 2. This we always would prefer for the individual receiving services to respond to, but the person may get assistance from a proxy if needed or preferred from the individual. And again, these are questions that are more objective. They are questions about some choices the person may have made, the number of times people have gone out into the community. The section now also includes information on self-directed services and supports that the person may be receiving as well. So this is just a look at what the typical data collection process is for the NCI Consumer Survey. This may vary state to state, but largely this is what we see. Background information, as much as possible, is collected before the meeting takes place. Then we have that standard face-to-face meeting with the person receiving services, occasionally with a proxy respondent as well. Sometimes after that meeting takes place is when you may collect some of that additional background information. Then we go into Odessa, which is our online data entry system. This is where all of the data for the consumer survey are entered. This sometimes will take place during the face-to-face meeting, so interviewers will go out with laptops or other devices and enter data directly into Odessa. Others will capture information on paper copies of the survey and then enter information later. And just to note here, some really important aspects of the ACS is that it is totally random sample. So when states pull the sample of individuals who will be surveyed, there is no screening measures because people have certain disabilities or levels of ability. People are not screened out because they live far away or for other reasons. It is confidential, so the data that we receive at HSRI is de-identified, and when states get their data and in reporting, again, individuals who took the survey are not identified in any way. And this, of course, is adults only, so 18 and over. So states use NCI data in a whole host of ways. These are just kind of the major buckets of how data are used, though. So largely for quality assurance and to improve services for individuals with disabilities and their families, to make those state-by-state comparisons, to assist with community transition. And what this means is that we have a number of states that are using NCI to at least focus in part on individuals who are moving from institutions into the community. A number of states have quality and DD councils who review NCI data at least yearly and make recommendations to the state on areas of focus. States use data for CMS waiver requirements and also to report to state legislatures. So we have a whole host of NCI resources for interviewers to use. They can all be found at nationalcoreindicators.org. This is just a list of some of those resources, including a chart generator if you're curious how your state is doing. We have an introduction from NCI self-advocates to talk about why NCI is important to them. We also have some videos on data entry for Odessa, as well as some additional resources, including an interviewer training guide and some videos. And we have some contact information for our project coordinators and directors of NCI. So this takes us to the end of Module 1, the review of NCI, the project, as well as the Adult Consumer Survey overview. Our next module will take a look at pre-survey and background information. Thanks so much for listening.